Today's video is a little bit country and a little bit rock and roll. Excuse the Osmonds reference, but I will be reviewing these two new palettes from Too Faced and showing you a little tutorial from each one. And along with the individual reviews, I'll make sure to compare these two palettes and let you know how they stack up with some other Too Faced palettes that I know and love. So I'm going to start off with the country palette, and first off, I did try to do my best like Carrie Underwood loose waves for this video. This says Nashville Nudes eyeshadow collection, and when you open it up, it's got that same format that a lot of these Too Faced palettes have, and you do have a little guide here that takes you through each of the looks that are lined out right here in the palette. So there's a day, a classic, and a fashion look. You do have a mirror right behind this little pamphlet, which I think is really handy. I love having mirrors in my palettes, and I really wanted to just fall in love with this palette because I love the thought of a country music themed palette. I think just the whole music theme in general with these two is so cute. And when I opened this one up and I saw that some of the shadows are named Cowboy Take Me Away, Famous in a Small Town, All American Girl, I'm like, I love those songs! But when you really get to looking at the textures of these shadows, you can see that there's really one matte shade. Dolly, the really dark brown, does come off without much shimmer. And if you look horizontally, you can see your top trio is going to give you a pretty natural, classic type of look. And the next one down, you know, you got a little more color to work with that pinky shade and the purple. And then your bottom one is a little bit more of a blue-toned, silvery, very cool look. Or you can mix all these up and work from all over the palette, and that's what I did for the little demo I'll be showing you. But to look at the swatches, you see what I'm talking about. Lots and lots of shine. I really wish there was a little more matte happening in this palette because the texture of Cowboy Take Me Away, that really pretty soft peach, is so wonderful. Too Faced really does matte shades really well, and I always want to see more of them in their palettes. That Paper Roses shade, it looks really pink in the palette, but it comes off more golden in the swatch. A couple of these shades I found to be especially like gritty in texture. One of them is Y'all, and that's that shade right up here at the top. I found it very hard to really build up the color on my lids. It was a little flaky, some glittery fallout with that. I thought Bluebird was a little bit gritty as well. Takes a little more work to build up, and I don't feel like it translates on the eyes with as much blue intensity as it does here in the palette. So I want to walk you through this look and then explain a little more. And by the way, for both of the different looks, I will have all the makeup I'm wearing all over my face listed in the info box as well. But to start off, I primed my lids, and then I used Famous in a Small Town, that pearly white, right around my innermost corner. Then I used Y'all all over the lid, and like I said, took a little work to build up, not the easiest color to work with. And then I used Dolly, the deep brown, as an outer corner type shade. I also placed it right up there in my crease with my small flat brush, and then I used a fluffier brush to buff that out a little bit. And if you wanted to, you could stop here and you've got a very classic neutral type of eye look, but I kept going, of course, and I went to Paper Roses, and I used this as my transition type color. I blended it right on the border of the brown, then I used the matte peach Cowboy Take Me Away as my highlight right up under my brow. For the lower lash line, I wanted to work in some of the blues a little bit, so I used Bluebird with my smudge brush just on the outer corner of my lower lash line, and then I worked inward with Nashville, which is a really like steely bluish silver type color, and I didn't feel like I got a great color punch with these. Not a lot of blue really stood out. To finish off the look, I pulled in my Milani Almond Cream shadow stick, and I used that to brighten my lower waterline, and then I used my Too Faced eyeliner in Perfect Navy across my upper lash line, and I topped that again with Bluebird, and then I just finished the whole thing off with some mascara on my upper and lower lashes. And it's not that I'm really disappointed in the look that I came out with. I mean, I think it's a pretty look. I can see that this palette does have the potential to go deeper and darker if you used more of the Dolly shade, or maybe put a nice rich deep blue cream shadow base under Bluebird. You could bring out more of that blue intensity. So what you need to know about this palette, overall, very shimmery. If you try to steer clear of shimmer, you're gonna have a hard time with that here because there's only one truly matte color. You can look kind of right here at these shadows and see you could pull off a pretty standard neutral type look, but again, I have issues with this color right here. I think that could have been really gorgeous if it were a more buttery, smooth texture and not quite so flaky. So as much as I wanted to love this palette, I love my country music, I love my Carrie Underwood songs. I just can't get that excited about this one. I would like to see more variety in colors, more variety in the textures that they're giving us instead of just so much shimmer. But for now, let's take a look at the Rock and Roll palette. So this palette, super cute on the outer packaging, as is the other one too. Safety pins on the outside. It says I Heart Metal right there in the corner. And then when you open it up, there is that space for the little how-to guide and your mirror, and then all the shadows inside. And very much like the Country palette, there's a lot of shimmer in this one as well. The light shade in the upper left called Rockabilly is matte. Everything else has some sort of shimmer or sparkle in it, but it's varying textures. There are a couple of these shades that I think flake glitter a little bit, and then there are some others that, you know, appear to have some glitter, but they still do apply pretty smoothly. And as you look at the swatches, you'll see something I was a little disappointed with this palette were the lightest shades. I thought Rockabilly, that matte cream shade, was really good, but then New Wave and New Romantic underneath it, I just thought were lacking a little intensity, and New Wave does have some glittery fallout with it. As far as the other shades in the palette, I think they swatch beautifully. I think you've got a lot of deep jewel tone colors, and I personally really like those kinds of shades. And the gold in here, I think it's a stunning tone of gold. I think it can make a great accent paired with like any of these other deep colors, but unfortunately the texture of this shadow seems really off to me. I really have to make sure I put it on top of a base, otherwise I have fallout and sparkle everywhere. So that's a shadow I have an issue with the fallout, and also a little bit of glittery, like light dusty type fallout with this center highlight shade right here. So obviously some pros and cons there with the textures of these shadows, but as far as the overall color selection, I really would have liked to have seen a few more mattes in here. Maybe just at least one of these deeper shades could have been matte to give you just a little more variety in the kinds of looks you can pull off and the way they come off on your eyes. But I've got to admit, I love the plum. I love this like deep sapphire blue. I think this dark olive green is gorgeous. So let's check out the tutorial so you can see what I'm talking about here. I first primed my lids, and then I used a small brush to put pop, that deep plum, all over the outer part of my lid. I also patted that up into my crease as well. And then I used my Sigma E25 brush to get a more diffused application in my crease. I also blended over the border just with a bare brush to get the smoothest border possible. And I used a smudge brush to apply the plum all the way under my lower lash line. I used a specific base. I used my Back to Basics smudge pot from e.l.f. Apply that on the inner part of the lid, and then I just used a small brush to pat that gold color very carefully on top. I took it all around the inner corner. You still have a little bit of fallout, but I think this helped the situation quite a bit. I used my M Cosmetics water liner in Black Night on my inner rim. And I used my Jordana Color Envy black liquid liner on the upper lash line. I applied some mascara to my upper and lower lashes, and I also added some false lashes as well to really give it that glammed up rock type look. I actually love the finished look that I got from this palette. I think the plum with that fun pop of gold is just really cool. Overall, I really like the jewel tones in this palette. I wish there were more variety in textures, as in, you know, having some more matte shades in there, but something this palette really reminds me of, it's got some stiff competition. It reminds me so much of my Urban Decay Smoked palette. This palette, I mean, I love this, you know, right up there with any of my Naked palettes, if not more. I think this one is so versatile. You've got like matte brown and black, some other matte shades up here, some really deep jewel tones, and it just totally reminds me of this kind of a palette, but I think I like the textures from Urban Decay even better, because as opposed to having, you know, a lot of sparkle thrown into these shades, you've got smoother textures that are still really pigmented. I just think the Smoked palette is one of the best things Urban Decay has come out with. And so if I was liking this kind of a concept, but I had to choose between the two, I would definitely go with the Smoked palette over this. But if you just were comparing these two side by side, I think I do kind of like the colors that are in the Rock and Roll palette over the Country one. I think this is total personal preference, so I'm just throwing out an opinion there. I think they're both pretty, but I find this one to be a little more fun, but as you heard throughout the review, I think they've both got their pros and cons individually. As far as this whole idea of country and rock and roll theme, themed eye palettes. I loved it. I love the thought when I first heard, like I caught some kind of Instagram post that Too Faced was coming out with these, I thought, oh my gosh, what a cute idea. You know, I think they're going to do something really awesome with this. The packaging is perfect on each of these, but once I really got to using the palettes, it's like I like them, but I don't love them. You know what I mean? I would have picked these up because I love to collect Too Faced palettes, basically. I'm like a Too Faced palette enthusiast. I have a video on all my favorite ones, actually. But when it comes right down to how well do these stack up with some of the other Too Faced palettes that I really, really love, you know, I wouldn't find myself recommending these over the Romantic Eye or Natural at Night or even the A la Mode palette or the Chocolate Bar. Like, I think they've got some really, really strong palettes that are great in color variety, great in variety of textures, and just the quality of each shade is so good. And then I pull out these and I feel like there are quite a few more questionable shades. Not that I can't pull off a good look with either of these, because I think I can, but when we're drawing comparisons here, I don't think these would be my favorites. I don't feel like they're total must-haves, but if you're someone who, like I said, likes to just keep up with all the latest Too Faced palettes, they are really adorable and they might be fun just more as a collector's type item. So thanks so much for taking time to check out this 2-in-1 review. I hope you guys have a great weekend and I'll see you again soon. Bye!